Hi, my name is Larry Plummer. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship at the Ivey Business School, and today I want to talk to you in this video about value propositions. Now, before we get into the conversation about value propositions, just want to talk about the fact that value propositions means a lot of things to a lot of different people. It has different, is used in a variety of different ways. But today we want to talk about how we sort of talk about value propositions at the Ivey Business School. For example, if you've ever been exposed to something like the business model canvas, the way the words value proposition are used in the canvas is not, it's related to, but not the same as the way we're going to be talking about value propositions today. I'm about to turn on some slides to talk through the discussion. And one of the things is you'll see that the slides are going to be available along with this video for you to be able to download the slides themselves. The slides actually will include a small set of appendix slides that will provide you a little more guidance on how to prepare your own value proposition for your own business. So let's get cracking. So as I mentioned, I'm Larry Plummer. We're going to be talking about value propositions the way we teach them here at the Ivey Business School. And the first thing I want to talk about is, let's first define what is a value proposition. As I mentioned, it's used in a variety of ways. The term is used in a variety of different ways. But at the core, what we want to talk about is what a value proposition is. It is your answer to this question: why should people do business with your company? So a good value proposition will explain the logic of how your customer will benefit, how they will use your product or service, and ultimately, really from a deep down standpoint, a good value proposition actually provides the rationale, the logic for why your business should exist at all. Why should others support it? Why others should give you resources, and so on. So one of the things I want to make very clear is what a value proposition is not. A value proposition is not a sales pitch. It's going to inform your sales pitch, but a value proposition, when we talk about value propositions, we're not just talking about your communications like your marketing, sales, advertising, and so on. It's not a sales pitch. It's not really a marketing statement. This is not a mission or vision statement. It's not a product or service description. And most importantly, I should have put this in red, this last bullet, which is a value proposition is not something you create later. I hear a lot of people talk about the fact that, well, I'm going to get my business up and running, we'll get the thing started, we'll start offering our product, and then we'll figure out our value proposition. That actually implies that you're not really clear on what a value proposition is, because what it is it's going to provide the core logic that informs every piece of your business. Let me reinforce that this way by just showing that a value proposition is sort of the axis on which all of the pieces of your business pivot. If you start to the right and work your way counterclockwise, there's no question that a good value proposition is going to inform your mission and vision statement. Okay, it's also going to inform your sales and marketing materials and the message that you're going to be giving customers, because presumably the value proposition is going to explain how your customers benefit from your solutions, from your services. But it also is connected to a whole range of other things, like employee recruiting. In the early days, how do you convince people to come work for your company? Well, part of that is going to be explaining to potential employees the value proposition for your company that will presumably attract them to some aspect of your business that they find enticing or appealing. Same goes with fundraising. So going out and talking to investors, part of what you're going to be doing is explaining the value proposition of your company, and this is why we justify our existence and also assure you that we are going to be a good risk in terms of providing us with the capital we might need. Same true with any other stakeholders, people, other organizations or people that will provide you with necessary resources, like a commercial landlord or something like that. And of course, a good value proposition will not only inform your strategic planning, but will form the core of your business model or plan. So the value proposition will definitely inform your ultimate business plan and your business model as you go forward. Let's talk now about what the elements are of a value proposition. There's actually 6 elements for a good value proposition. the first three are fairly straightforward. And one of the things that we talk about here at the Ivey Business School is we emphasize that every entrepreneurial venture solves a problem. There's two examples we like to use a lot because they're fairly well known, at least in Ontario, certainly, and probably in Canada actually, is every business solves a problem. The two examples we like are Saks Apparel and Wealthsimple. Saks Apparel, both of these businesses were started by Ivey alumni. And Saks Apparel, I'm not going to get into a discussion or describe the problem that Saks Apparel addresses, but it is very clear that Saks Apparel as a company has a very clear problem statement at the core of their venture. They're trying to solve a particular problem, typically around comfort for men, related to their product. So they have a clear problem statement they can articulate. Same true with Wealthsimple. In fact, Wealthsimple, the name Wealthsimple implies part of the problem they're addressing, which is the founder of Wealthsimple will tell you, we've made investing too complicated. That's a problem. And as a result, people are, especially younger generations, are less likely or more intimidated to get involved in investing, particularly for retirement in the long term. So every business, even a business that provides something fun or delightful, like, even a brewery, should be able to articulate a problem statement that at least for a certain group of people, they're providing a solution to a problem that they can articulate. Step number 2 is to describe, all right, who has this problem? Who are the people or the organization that have this problem? And in a little bit, we're going to, in some subsequent slides, we'll talk more about what kind of information you would put in here. But this is an important piece, that you have a problem, but you can also describe for whom the problem is real or is particularly acute or an immediate problem, immediate issue. The third thing is to talk about your product or solution, the product or service. That's clear. So, these first 3 items, they go hand in hand. And you want to basically be talking about, here's the problem we're trying to fix. This is the problem for whom we're trying to fix it, and this is the product or solution that we're going to be proposing or that we do offer for solving that particular problem. Okay, next 3 things are a little more subtle and require a little thought in terms of how you would then present the logic of your business. A good value proposition will also include statements about what life is like for your customer or for your persona, what life is like without your solution. So how did or how do your customers fix the problem now without having access to your product or service or solution? And one of the things we need to emphasize is that it could be that in your case, your customer or your persona actually, one, they may not even know the problem exists. Or even if they do know it exists, they may be just trying to ignore the problem. They may just be trying to figure out some kind of workaround. So it's important that you actually can articulate, how do people or organizations in your persona group, how do they currently deal with the problem? What do they currently do? Then, of course, we want to be able to describe, all right, once they have access and start using your product or service or solution, what changes? So how will your customers use your solution to fix the problem? And then the last one, step number 6, which is, and it's last just because of the logical flow of the statement that you're writing, but it may actually be the most important paragraph that you write, is to think about 2 things. One is, when they start using your product or service, how do your customers benefit, obviously, but in how is that benefit going to be measured? So you be careful about describing how that your customer is going to be, well off, or they're going to be, they'll be better served, or they'll be happier, or whatever. You need to think in terms about what is a concrete, measurable improvement that your product or service will offer. And if you're struggling with trying to figure out what how to measure that improvement in your customer's life or your persona's life, that could be a sign of a problem. So we want to make sure that we can not only articulate how they benefit, but how that benefit can be measured. Related to that, we also need to know what it is that your customer or persona has to give up in order to use your product. Clearly, one of the things they have to give up, I'm assuming, for most of you, if not all of you, is a price. They're presumably going to pay you. So this is a great place, and the place, in fact, to put your price information, what exactly you're going to be charging for your product. $19.95, $14.95, could be subscription based, or it could be on a, priced on a value based basis, after a quote is delivered to the customer, whatever. So clearly price information, but you have to go beyond price in terms of what the customer gives up. We want to think in terms about other costs that the customer may incur in trying to use your product. Will it require a lot of learning? Would it require excessive switching costs? One of my favorite examples of a switching cost that you may have actually heard before, and I'm staring at it right now because I'm using a laptop to record this video, is the keyboard layout for most English language keyboards is going to be the QWERTY layout. The word QWERTY comes from the letters in the upper left-hand corner spell out QWERTY. So it's called the QWERTY layout. And the thing about the QWERTY layout is that it's actually a very old layout that was invented first for mechanical typewriters. And it's actually intended to slow you down, or more accurately, to prevent the jamming of the typewriter while you use it. So when you're in an electronic environment like we are now, the QWERTY layout is actually comparatively inefficient. But the reason none of us switch to a more efficient layout, and there are competing layouts out there currently being offered, the reason we don't switch is because who wants to learn how to use a new keyboard layout? It's just the switching costs are just too high. Yeah, there might be more value in being able to double the speed at which I type, but it's not worth the switching cost to change that over. So again, these 6 elements combined. And by the way, we're going to talk in a minute about how to write write the value proposition. And the idea is that ideally you want to be able to compress all 6 pieces of information: the problem, the persona, the solution, life before, life after, and the cost-benefit discussion, all of these into one page, single-spaced. I want to now sort of give you, to put this idea in motion, is I want to actually share with you a video. I'm going to play a video, and then we're going to walk through the value proposition being offered. Let me also explain that what you're going to watch is a corny infomercial for a product. You may have actually seen this ad before, this television ad before, for a product. Infomercials are actually a great source of information on how to learn how to do a value proposition, because most infomercials, they don't want to leave anything to the imagination, so they clearly spell out every aspect of the value proposition for the business. So I'm going to share with you the video now, and then I'll come back and discuss what we're seeing on the in the video.
Falls are the #1 cause of injury to senior citizens. Acorn Stairlifts has the solution. Just don't fall. Sit, relax, ride with an Acorn Stairlift, the world's leader in stairlifts. Don't let limited mobility keep you from going up and down your stairs, even outside. Call Acorn Stairlifts now for a free information kit and no obligation quote. Why risk falling when you can safely ride?
Our Acorn Stairlift is definitely more affordable than moving.
The Acorn Stairlift has a padded seat and backrest. Safety sensors stop the chair if there are obstacles. The seat swivels and locks so you don't twist your body. And the Acorn Stairlift folds away. It even runs during power outages.
I was really surprised at how little it cost.
Call 1-800-611-8027 right now for your free information kit, or visit our website today. That's 1-800-611-8027.
Okay, so Acorn Stairlift. I'm hoping some of you may have seen this video before or seen this ad before, but what we can do is we can now map out the value proposition completely laid out in this television ad. So we want to think first about what is the problem that the Acorn Stairlift solves, the persona, who's the intended beneficiary for this particular product, and of course we want to talk about the solution. Now, when I ask participants in workshops a lot, interactively talking about the problem, the immediate thing, and it's not incorrect to say this, a lot of people will say, well, the problem is that the elderly are are frequently falling on their stairs. So this idea that, the first line in the ad says very clearly that falling downstairs is a leading cause of injury for seniors. But actually, the problem, that's too limiting. It's going to be a piece of information we will include in the problem statement. Later on, we'll talk about adding what's called the root cause. Why does this problem exist? Well, that would be the answer. But we really want to dig in sort of into in depth in terms of what really the problem is. And the problem actually isn't even related to climbing stairs, because it's very specific and it's very subtle. But actually, when you think about it, what the problem is for the Acorn stair lift is that people with mobility problems, they need a way to stay in the homes that they own. So it's not about solving the problem of climbing stairs per se. That's clearly part of it. But really what we're trying to do at the end of the day, what's motivating people to buy this product, is this idea that their mobility is preventing them from being able to stay in their house. Which leads us now to the persona, which is, of course, a very common response is, who's the persona? Well, it's people with mobility problems, people having trouble climbing stairs. But again, the persona actually needs to be more specific and more correct, which is, yes, it is people with mobility problems, but it's also people who own homes, and specifically own multi-story homes. So actually own homes that have a staircase. So this is the idea around the persona, is it's not just for anyone with mobility problems, it's people with mobility problems or mobility concerns who also own a multi-story home. Of course, the solution is the Acorn stair lift itself, but there's also other information. It's not only what the features and the features of the product, how it works. It's easy to use. It works. It works when the power is out. There's safety features built in, but also at the very end, it tells you if you want to actually buy this product, you actually can call the 800 number or go visit their website. So the idea is that all of this information would go in this particular corner of the value proposition of describing the solution. Everything except the price, of course. Now we want to think about in terms of life before, life after, and the benefit and cost analysis or statement for this particular product. Now, before I get into this, a common mistake people make is they think what I'm saying is when you describe life before and life after, some people mistakenly assume that step number 4 means restating the problem statement from number 1. That's not true. Number 4 is basically saying, given the problem they have, how are people currently dealing with the problem? And in this particular case, we have people who are living in fear, they're anxious, they're uncertain, they're risking injury to climbing stairs if they do have mobility problems. We could also infer from the story that there's probably assistance from family members that is involved here. Hey, I can't climb the stairs. Can somebody run upstairs to the bedroom and go grab a book or my glasses or whatever? So the idea is that given the problem, this is how people are actually dealing with it. They're either risking injury to themselves or maybe they're asking family and friends for help. Now we can actually deal with the life after once the product is installed. And here's a direct quote from the ad. Sit, relax, safely ride. So the idea is that there's peace of mind. There's the sense of easing the anxiety of being able to stay in the home by using the product. It's easy to use, easy to install, and so on. And again, it's last on the list, number 6, but it's by far could be one of the most important parts of this whole statement, is to think about the benefit and cost. Now, I mentioned price. Now, technically speaking, the television ad does not provide any price information, but it does actually give us 2 really good clues from things that the actors say in the television ad. One of the actors is quoted as saying, "It's a lot cheaper than I thought," or words to that effect. So that's clearly basically trying to imply, it's not as expensive as you think. We're not going to tell you on TV how much it actually costs, but it's not as expensive as you think. But even better, they even go a step further in the television ad by explaining the benefit cost analysis where another actor says, look, whatever this thing does cost, it's cheaper than moving. So while you may actually feel that the price we're going to charge for you to install this product is high, it could be a lot worse. Moving would be a lot more expensive. So we want to make sure that we talk about the fact here that in this case, again, I put price with a question mark because we don't have the actual price. We can assume it's in the thousands of dollars range. But whatever it is, it's going to be cheaper than moving, and it's easy to use. I don't hear anything in the ad that might imply that there's a lot giving up. Other costs, there might be side effects. There might be some, I've had participants in workshops talk about the fact that maybe the people that use the stair lift, maybe they start feeling like, they start feeling their age more, like, geez, maybe I am older, so there might be some side effects in terms of self-esteem and so on. But for the most part, it's not a hard product to learn how to use and so on. So this is the information that would go in the benefit cost analysis. Okay, so these are an example. What I now want to move on to is actually give you some concrete advice about how to actually write this statement. As I mentioned, a value proposition ideally fits on one piece of paper and would actually encompass 6 paragraphs, one paragraph, short paragraph, for each of the 6 elements of the value proposition. The shorter is always better. If you're feeling that you need multiple pages to explain the logic of your business, that doesn't necessarily, but it could indicate a problem with the logic of your business, and that it's either too complicated or the logic is too disconnected. So let's talk first about how do you write a good problem statement. So a good problem statement actually includes 3 criteria that you want to look at. First, your statement has to be believable. And by believable, what we mean is the statement has to be demonstrably true. And there has to be no doubt that the problem is real and exists. There's a bunch of ways you can actually do this. You can provide good data. So you might start with statements like 7 out of 10 people have this problem, clearly research indicates that this problem is real. So in other words, you provide good data from reputable sources to make sure the problem is believable. As an example, here working with entrepreneurs at the Ivey Business School, we've had a team, for example, start a cosmetics business for men. And honestly, and maybe this says too much about me, but when I first heard this idea that they were going to start a cosmetics business for men, I was skeptical. I thought, but men don't wear makeup. Well, it turns out maybe my generation doesn't, but it's actually very common and it's a high growth market. So anticipating my objection or my skepticism, the entrepreneurs produced all of the data I needed to absolutely make it clear I was wrong. There is genuinely a set of problems, blemishes, self-esteem, under-eye concerns with the bags and so on, that men feel, younger men especially, are feeling a strong need to improve their appearance. The second piece is you have to write the statement in a way that's compelling. You have to be able to explain for somebody really disconnected from your business why we should care. In some cases, if your idea is a medical business, a lot of times the compelling will take care of itself. So even in the Saks apparel example, there's a certain group of customers that wear Saks underwear for whom they almost have a medical condition with skin ailments and so on, that automatically makes it compelling. You can understand why people who don't have a solution to that problem are feeling discomfort or requiring medical care. In other cases, how you make the statement compelling is actually can be very tricky, and it just requires some practice. Thinking through about how you explain to somebody that not only do I find this problem believable, but here's an explanation for why you should care about the problem. The third one is the root cause. Clearly the root cause, if going back to the acorn stairlift thing, the root cause is as seniors age, they will have increased mobility problems and therefore they're more likely to fall. So as I said before earlier in this presentation, the fact that seniors are likely to fall and that it's a leading cause of injuries for seniors is part of the problem statement, but it goes into the category of root cause. This is why this problem exists in the first place. Next thing we want to talk about is how you write up your persona. Now, your persona should be semi-fictional in the sense that you're not revealing the identity of anyone you talk to, and your semi-fictional persona should not be representative of just one person, but should actually be a persona representative of an entire group of people you think have the problem you've described in number 1. Part of that is we want to make sure that you actually include pieces of information that are demographic, geographic, psychographic, and behavioral. And I'll give you an example of each one. So demographic is my age, my race, my gender, my marriage status, my income level, my occupation, stuff like that. But geographic information can also be helpful, and there's two pieces of geographic information you want to include here. You want to know where people are, and you want to know where people are from. Because where they're from, that difference between where they're from and where they are, could actually provide you significant clues on how you might reach your customer, or some of the other information like their psychographic and behavioral information. So if somebody was born and raised and has lived in Canada all their life, or even if it could be something as simple as they're here in London, Ontario now, but they're originally from Saskatoon, that the difference between those two locations might provide you some clues, maybe not. Other examples may be more important. So for example, you might have somebody that's in London, Ontario here now, but they were born and raised in Shanghai, China, which is a very different culture, very different society. And so sometimes you might expect, well, somebody who's come from that far away, both physical distance and cultural distance, they actually might be exhibiting a different set of issues or challenges related to the problem that we've identified in number one. Psychographic is how people think, what's going on inside their heads. So their values, what's important to them. So they might be they might have strong opinions about the environment or sustainability, or they have high ambitions for their careers, or they're big on diversity and inclusion, or whatever. The idea is that psychographic information conveys information about how people are thinking. And then related to that, closely related in fact, is the behavioral information, which is how they behave. I'll just give you one example. It's better to explain personally. The behavioral information that's probably most relevant is how people make decisions to buy their products, because that's probably going to be the most relevant for your business. I tend to be a very impulsive person. I'm naturally impulsive. It's just sort of my default. And honestly, there are some purchase decisions that don't lend themselves to impulsive choices. So buying a car, choosing a university, picking a career, deciding on what to study at university. These are not the types of things that you want to do in an impulsive way. So because I know that about myself, that I'm impulsive, I tend to force myself to make a lot of lists and be very, very meticulous about planning. My wife will be the one that tells you that it takes me forever to make a decision to buy a car, because I have to do lots and lots of research, because I'm fearful that I'm going to end up making a decision that's in the end very impulsive, and which I assume will maybe increase the chances that I picked the wrong one. If you're familiar with the 4 Ps, marketing 4 Ps, you can actually Google the term marketing 4 Ps, lots of information on this. There's actually a typo in this slide. Sorry about that. I'll make sure it gets corrected in the slides that I upload for you to have. Clearly, P number 1 is product. You describe the product, its features, how it, what it does, its weight, size, factual statements about the product or service. This applies to services as well. P2 is actually supposed to say placement. Placement means how is the product sold. For some of you, it's placed online, so it's sold through an online outlet. Some of you, it's placed in a brick and mortar store, so it's sold physically in a store. Or some of you, it's both. So typically, P2 here is not supposed to say promotion; it's supposed to say placement. P number 3 is how is it promoted? How are your customers going to become aware of your product your solution's existence? Here are some other things about steps 4, 5, and 6. When you describe life before, you want to spend most of your time talking about the typical scenario. This is how customers typically work around the problem or address the problem now. This is a place where you might actually describe some current products on the market. And you might want to explain, well, they might use this product, but the product isn't quite perfectly suited to the situation. Therefore, the problem continues to be underserved. It's also a time for you, though, to talk about the worst case scenario. So while going back to the Acorn stair lift example, while it's true that some people are likely to fall and suffer an injury, I bet you in some cases it does actually lead to death. it's actually important that you mention that. You don't want to spend time, a huge amount of time, focusing on the aspect of death related to seniors falling, but it's clearly part of the story. Similarly, with life after using your product, you want to spend, again, talking about the typical case. How would your typical customer, what's the typical case of how the customer will benefit from using your product or service? But you also want to be able to mention the best case scenario, even if it's briefly mentioning about, and in the best cases, it would actually, sorry, trying to think about a good example, but at the Acorn stair lift, not only can people possibly live in their home longer, but maybe there's some cases in which using the stair lift actually extends the life of the owner. So they actually receive a number of health benefits out of it. The last four, there are 4 Ps, product placement, promotion. This number 6, you want to specifically mention price or pricing strategy. So you might say, it's $100 a unit, or $5 a unit, or whatever. And if you're going to offer any kind of price discounts or price breaks, you might put that in here. And of course, you're going to also want to talk about, are there any switching or learning costs, any side effects of using your product, and of course, explaining how it is that your customer benefits. So just to review where we're at with this presentation, we want to talk about the fact that a value proposition provides the logic, explains the rationale for why your business should exist or does exist. And it answers this question: why should I or anyone do business with your company? And as I say, it's not something that's just related to sales pitch or marketing. It's not just something this is not just about, I'm not talking about just what you write in your marketing brochures or put in your websites. I'm talking about something that really defines the underlying logic of your venture. And it's really important that you understand that it's something you're doing now. Value proposition is going to inform every dimension of your business as you go forward. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation on value proposition. As I mentioned, just be cautious about the fact that value propositions, if you Google the term value proposition, you're going to find lots and lots of different definitions of the meaning. So here we actually have a more encompassing view of what a value proposition is. And as I say, practice writing it down, share your value proposition, write it in one page, share it with people that you know, share it with your customers, share it with people that are likely stakeholders and maybe want to invest in your business to get their feedback. And just remember that it's a living, breathing document. You may have to update it as you go. But if you get it right, your chances of success will go through the roof. So best of luck.